A woman drives home from work on a Tuesday evening in November. It is raining. It has been raining since lunchtime. She is on a dual carriageway she has driven 1,000 times. The car in front brakes. She brakes. And the car does not stop in time. The tyres she is running were legal. They had tread above the minimum. They passed the last MOT. And they still failed her because legal and safe are not the same thing in the UK tyre market. And nobody told her that. That is not bad luck. That is the business model. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. Let me start with a number that should be on the front page of every newspaper in this country. In 2024, 172 people were killed or seriously injured in incidents where defective tyres were a contributory factor. That is the highest figure in a decade. That is 9 above the 5-year average. That is a trend moving in the wrong direction, while the government has no road safety strategy in place. Over 6 million tyres on UK roads right now have illegal tread. Every year, more than 2 million vehicles fail their MOT due to tyre defects. Of those, 1 million are classified as dangerous. 1 million dangerous on UK roads right now. And yet, if you walk into Halfords or ATS Ishramaster or go onto Black Circles today, nobody is going to explain the single most important number on the tyre you're about to buy. Nobody is going to mention the EU wet grip rating. Nobody is going to tell you that the difference between an A-rated tyre and an F-rated tyre at 50 miles per hour in the rain is 18 metres. 18 metres is more than 3 car lengths. 18 metres is the difference between stopping in time and not stopping at all. Here is the first thing you need to understand. Britain is one of the worst places on earth to be running a bad tyre. Not because our roads are particularly dangerous, not because we drive fast, because it rains. Constantly, persistently, structurally. The UK averages over 1,200 millimetres of rainfall per year across much of the country. Scotland, Wales and the north of England receive significantly more. Our roads are wet for a meaningful portion of every single month. The limit of a tyre's grip in the UK is almost always reached in wet conditions, not dry ones. That is why every serious UK tyre test, Auto Express, What Car Evo, weigh wet performance at 50% or more of the overall score. Because wet grip is the metric that determines whether you get home or you do not. And the tyre market in the UK is structured around a rating system that measures exactly this. A wet grip score from A to E on the EU tyre label, which is still used in Great Britain. An A-rated tyre stops in the shortest distance. An E-rated tyre stops in the longest distance. Most budget tyres sold in this country are rated E or F for wet grip. Most British drivers have never looked at that label. Most tyre fitters never mention it. And the retailer selling you the cheapest option on the website is legally not required to explain it. Every tyre sold in the UK carries an EU label, 3 ratings: fuel efficiency, external noise, wet grip. The wet grip rating is the one that matters for safety. It runs from A, which is the shortest stopping distance, to E, which is the longest. The rating is determined by a standardised braking test from 50 miles per hour on a wet surface. Between an A-rated tyre and an F-rated tyre at 50 miles per hour in the wet, the stopping distance difference is up to 18 metres. 3 car lengths. The F-rated tyre is still travelling when the A-rated tyre has fully stopped. This is not a theoretical difference. It is a measured, standardised, independently verified difference. It is on the label of every tyre you can buy. It is almost never discussed at the point of sale. The label is there, the information is there. The industry is counting on you not to look at it. Here is where it gets worse. The wet grip rating on the EU label is self-certified by the manufacturer. There is no independent verification required before the label is printed. The tyre company runs its own test on its own track, reports its own result and prints its own label. For premium manufacturers with reputations to protect, that self-certification is broadly reliable. For budget manufacturers producing commodity tyres at the lowest possible cost, The gap between the label and the reality of an independent test can be significant. Here is what happens when independent organisations test budget tyres against premium ones in real conditions. What car magazine tested a budget Triangle tyre against premium alternatives including Continental? In the wet braking test from 50 miles per hour, the Triangle took 31.4 metres to stop. The Continental stopped in 28.5 metres. When the Continental had come to a complete stop, the car on Triangle tyres was still travelling at 15 miles per hour. At 15 miles per hour, you will write off a parked car. You will seriously injure a pedestrian. You will still be moving when you have supposedly stopped. The German motoring organisation ADAC, which runs some of the most rigorous tyre tests in the world, tested a budget double coin tyre in their 2025 summer test. The double coin had the worst wet grip in the test, dangerously long braking distances, and ADAC described it as a tyre even a budget-conscious driver should steer well clear of. The double coin was also, at the time of the test, the cheapest tyre in the group. Evo magazine's independent test found that in straight-line wet braking from 50 miles per hour, the worst budget tyre in their test required almost 12 metres more than the best premium tyre to stop. 12 metres, at speed, in the rain, on a road where another vehicle, a cyclist or a child might be in that space. The pattern across every independent test is identical. Premium tyres and budget tyres perform similarly in dry conditions at legal speeds. In the wet, the gap opens. At motorway speeds, in heavy rain on UK roads in November, that gap is the margin between a near miss and a fatality. Before we get to the specific brands to avoid and the ones worth buying, I want to spend a moment on the part-worn tyre trade in the UK because it deserves its own conversation and almost never gets one. Part-worn tyres are used tyres, typically sourced from Europe where regulations require earlier replacement, sold in the UK as a cheap alternative to new tyres. They are legal to sell, they are widespread, they are frequently dangerous. A new tyre leaves the factory with 8mm of tread. The legal minimum in the UK is 1.6mm. A part-worn tyre might arrive at a UK seller with 3 or 4mm of tread remaining. The customer pays £20 instead of £60 and believes they have bought a bargain. What they have actually bought is a tyre that is already more than halfway through its safe life, with an unknown history of how it was driven, what loads it carried, what curbs it hit, and what the condition of its internal structure actually is. Tyre damage is often internal. You cannot see a weakened carcass, you cannot see a cord that is close to failing. A part-worn tyre can look fine on the outside and be structurally compromised in ways that only reveal themselves at motorway speed under emergency braking, which, Magazine's investigation into part-worn tyres found that the majority of sellers were failing to comply with the legal requirements for labelling and safety checks, trading standards. Officers who have carried out operations on part-worn tyre sellers have found dangerous tyres sold as roadworthy with disturbing regularity. Cuts, bulges, exposed cords, damage to the internal structure, all on tyres being fitted to cars that will then drive on UK motorways. This is not a fringe market, it is a mainstream one, particularly in lower income areas where the immediate cost saving appears compelling. A £20 tyre that fails at 70 miles per hour does not save you money, it costs you everything. The cheapest tyre you will ever buy may be the most expensive decision you ever make. I want to be precise here. I am not saying every budget tyre from these manufacturers is dangerous. I am saying that independent testing consistently identifies significant wet grip deficiencies in their budget tier products, and that those deficiencies are material on UK roads. Westlake, TrackMax, Zetex and Hifly are Chinese-manufactured budget brands widely sold through online comparison sites and independent fitters in the UK. They are priced to move. They meet the legal minimum standard. In independent wet braking tests, they consistently perform significantly below premium alternatives, in some tests by margins of 8 to 12 metres from 50 miles per hour. Sunny, as tested by Tyre Reviews in 2025, was described as the only tyre in its test group that produced genuine scare moments, uncontrolled oversteer in a car not designed to oversteer, and the worst performer in wet conditions by a meaningful margin. Triangle, as tested by What Car, produced the worst wet braking distance in their small car tyre test, with a gap of nearly 3 metres over the best performer. Double coin, as tested by ADAC in their 2025 summer test, was rated as not recommended, a tyre with dangerous braking distances that earned the lowest score in the test, despite also having the longest projected tread life. Long-lasting and dangerous is a particular kind of bad deal. Cormoran, tested by Evo magazine, required almost 12 metres more to stop than the best tyre in their test in straight-line wet braking. Evo described it as treacherous in the wet. None of these tyres are illegal. All of them meet the minimum standard. The minimum standard was not designed to keep you safe on a wet November motorway at 70 miles per hour. It was designed to be easy to comply with. Before I give you the brands and specific tyres that actually perform in UK conditions, drop a comment right now. What brand are you running at the moment? And if you bought them because they were the cheapest option on the comparison site, say that too. I already know what a significant proportion of those comments are going to say. Best for most drivers, Michelin. Cross Climate 2 or Primacy 5, Michelin is the benchmark. In independent UK tests, Michelin consistently places at or near the top for wet braking, aquaplaning resistance, and the performance characteristic that matters most on British roads, the ability to maintain grip progressively as conditions deteriorate rather than losing grip suddenly. The Cross Climate 2 is specifically relevant for UK drivers because it carries the 3-peak mountain snowflake certification, meaning it has passed standardised cold weather testing. For drivers in Scotland, Northern England, Wales, or anywhere that sees frost and ice from October to March, an all-season tyre with snowflake certification is a more honest product than a summer tyre called All Season. The Primacy 5 is Michelin's touring tyre, quieter, more comfortable or optable, with the same wet grip credentials. In What Car's small car tyre test, the Michelin placed second overall behind only the Continental, with wet braking described as confident and progressive. Best premium alternative, Continental Premium Contact 7 or All Season Contact 2. Continental won What Car's small car tyre test outright. Shortest wet braking in the test. Most steering feel, most predictable handling at the limit. The Premium Contact 7 stopped in 28.5 metres from 50 miles per hour in the wet. The Budget Triangle stopped in 31.4 metres. That 2.9 metre gap multiplied across a real emergency is the difference between the car that stopped and the car that did not. The Continental Sport Contact 7 won the ADAC 2025 summer tyre test. Shortest wet braking distance in the group at 28.4 metres. Excellent handling in both wet and dry. The ADAC gave it the best score in the test. The All-Season Contact 2 placed second in Auto Express's 2025 to 2026 all-season test, directly behind the Pirelli Cinturato All-Season SF3. Best value mid-tier tyres are Bridgestone Turanza and Hankook Ventus. If the price of Michelin and Continental is a genuine constraint, Bridgestone and Hankook represent the most honest step down. Bridgestone placed second overall in the Auto Express 2025 summer tyre test. Excellent wet braking, strong in independent tests consistently. Their Turanza range is designed specifically for everyday road use in the UK and European market. Hankook placed third in the same Auto Express 2025 test. The Hankook Ventus Evo K137 was described as delivering impressive wet ability and excellent refinement. Hankook has been closing the gap on premium brands in independent tests over the last 3 years, and now represents genuine value at a price point meaningfully below Michelin and Continental. Both Bridgestone and Hankook are a significant step above the budget tier in every wet performance metric. If you cannot stretch to premium, stretch to here. Here is the rule, write it somewhere. Before you buy any tyre, look at 2 things: the EU wet grip rating on the label and the tread depth it ships with. A brand new tyre can legally be sold in the UK with as little as 6mm of tread. Premium tyres typically ship with 8 to 9mm. You can legally buy a new tyre that is already closer to replacement than a premium alternative. For the EU wet grip rating, anything below C should concern you. Anything rated E or F should not be fitted to a car that drives on UK roads in winter. That is not a preference. That is a physics statement about stopping distance on wet tarmac. Ask the fitter directly. What is the EU wet grip rating on this tyre? If they cannot tell you, they either do not know or do not want you to know. Either answer should change your decision. The difference in price between a budget tyre and a mid-tier tyre is typically £15 to £30 per corner. On a full set of 4 tyres, that is £60 to £120. That is the cost of a few tanks of petrol. That is what separates you from 8 to 12 metres of additional stopping distance in the conditions that will test your tyres most. Spend that money every time. In 2024, 172 people were killed or seriously injured on UK roads in incidents where defective tyres were a factor. That is 172 preventable events. 172 families had their lives changed on roads they had driven before, in conditions they had driven in before, on tyres that looked fine but were not. TyreSafe, the UK's leading tyre safety charity, has described the government's lack of action as complacency and says the UK is so far behind much of Europe on tyre safety policy. Research commissioned by Halfords estimates that faulty tyres are 4 times more dangerous than drink driving in terms of deaths and serious injuries. That finding received almost no mainstream press coverage. The drink driving equivalent of faulty tyres, applied to 2 million vehicles on UK roads, is not being treated as a public safety emergency. It is being treated as a personal responsibility issue by an industry that profits from selling you the cheapest option and calling it adequate. The minimum legal standard is not a safety standard. It is a floor set decades ago for roads and speeds and conditions that have changed substantially. Everything above that floor and below the premium tier is a decision about risk that nobody at the point of sale will help you make. Because helping you make that decision correctly would often mean selling you a more expensive tyre with a lower margin. The EU tyre label exists, the wet grip rating exists, the independent test data from ADAC, Auto Express, Whatcar, and Evo exists and is publicly available. The industry is counting on you not to look at any of it before you hand over your card. Look at it, every time, without exception. The 4 letters on the sidewall, or the wet grip rating, are the most important consumer safety information in the UK automotive market. They are also the most ignored. That gap between importance and attention is where 172 people a year are being killed or seriously injured. That is not bad luck. That is the consequence of a market that was never designed to prioritise your safety at the point of sale. Subscribe to Ripped Off Britain because next week we are going inside the UK new build housing market. If you signed for a new build in the last 10 years, there is a better than even chance you paid £300,000, £400,000 or £500,000 for a product that was designed to look like a home, photograph like a home, and fall apart like a rental. We are going inside the walls, the plumbing behind the drywall, the insulation that was never there, the NHBC warranty that sounds like protection and reads like a liability shield. We are naming the builders, we are showing you the documents, we are telling you exactly what to ask for before you sign anything. Subscribe so you do not miss it, and if someone you know is about to buy tyres, send them this video first.